Hello everybody, this is Sam from the Third Eye Lion channel. I'm going to start this new series here on this YouTube channel. I really would like to share the literature of L. Frank Baum's Oz books, and I also would like to do guided meditation. So how these videos are going to be structured is I'm going to be reading a chapter showing some of the public domain images from this public domain text, and I'm going to link to the online book in the description so anybody can read it from there. And at the end of the video, I'm going to do a guided meditation, and in the guided meditation, it will go over what some aspect or some energies of the chapter, and different things. Feeling very intuitive with the guided meditations immediately after I'm reading the chapters. So I'm going to start here and start with the first image. The cowardly lion between two trees for protection in his mind. Very, very beautiful image. And one of the characters I very much identify with is the cowardly lion. So, quick backstory on the book. It was published in 1900. Before this, L. Frank Baum was a playwright and an actor who published a few books under different names. He also published, most famously before this, a book called American Fairy Tales. He was very interested in the old fairy tales and adapting it for the modern American audience in turn of the century. And he's succeeded because these books are still being adapted and redone to this very day. And we're really happy. I'm really happy to be able to share this. So, I'm going to start with the first chapter. Dorothy lived in the midst of the great Kansas prairie, with her Uncle Henry, who was a farmer, and Aunt Em, who was the farmer's wife. Their house was small, for the lumber to build it had been carried by wagon for many miles. There were 4 walls, a floor, and a roof, which made one room, and this room contained a rusty-looking cooking stove, a cupboard for the dishes, a table, 3 or 4 chairs, and the beds. And first image here, we have Dorothy, Toto down there. And all the illustrations in this book are done by an artist named W.W. Denslow. Uncle Henry and Aunt Em had a big bed in one corner and Dorothy a little bed in another corner. There was no garret at all. There was no cellar, except a small hole dug in the ground called a cyclone cellar, where the family would go in case of one of those great whirlwinds arose, mighty enough to crash any building in its path. It was reached by a trap-door in the middle of the floor, for which a ladder led down into the small dark hole. When Dorothy stood in the doorway and looked around, she could see nothing but the great gray prairie on every side. Not a tree nor a house broke the broad sweep of flat country that reached the edge of the sky in all directions. The sun had baked the plowed land into a gray mass, with little cracks running throughout it. Even the grass was not green, for the sun had burned the tops of the long blades until they were the same gray color to be seen everywhere. Once the house had been painted, but the sun blistered the paint, and the rains washed it away. And now the house was a dull gray as everything else. When Aunt Em came there to live, she was a young, pretty wife. The sun and wind had changed her too. They had taken the sparkle from her eyes and left them a sober gray. They had taken the red from her cheeks and her lips, and now they were gray also. She was thin and gaunt, and never smiled. Now, when Dorothy, who was an orphan, came to her, Aunt Em had been so startled by the child's laughter that she would scream and press her hands upon her heart whenever Dorothy's merry voice reached her ears. And she still looked at that little girl with wonder that she could find anything at all to laugh at. Uncle Henry never laughed. He worked hard from morning till night, and did not know what joy was. He was also gray, from his long beard to his rough boots, and he looked stern and solemn, and rarely spoke. It was Toto that made Dorothy laugh, and saved her from growing as gray as her other surroundings. Toto was not gray. He was a little black dog with little silky hair and a small black eyes that twinkled merrily on either side of his funny wee nose. Toto played all day long, and Dorothy played with him and loved him dearly. Today, however, they were not playing. Uncle Henry sat upon the doorstep and looked anxiously at the sky, which was even grayer than usual. Dorothy stood in the door with Toto in her arms and looked to the sky too. Aunt Em was washing the dishes. From the far north they heard a low wail of the wind, and Uncle Henry and Dorothy could see where the long grass bowed in waves before the coming storm. There now came a sharp whistling in the air from the south as they turned their eyes that way and saw ripples in the grass coming from that direction also. Here's the picture of Uncle Henry on the doorstep with Dorothy and Aunt Em washing the dishes. Suddenly, Uncle Henry stood up. "There's a cyclone coming, Em," he called to his wife. "I'll go look after the stock." Then he ran towards the shed where the cows and horses were kept. Aunt Em dropped her work and came to the door. One glance told her of the danger close at hand. "Quick, Dorothy!" she screamed. "Run for the cellar!" Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed, and the girl started to get him. Aunt Em, badly frightened, threw open the trap door in the floor and climbed down the ladder into the small dark hole. Dorothy caught Toto at last and started to follow her aunt. When she was halfway across the room, there came a great shriek from the wind, and the house shook so hard that she lost her footing, sat down suddenly upon the floor. A strange thing then happened. The house whirled around 2 or 3 times and rose slowly through the air. Dorothy felt as if she was going up in a balloon. The north and south winds met where the house stood and made the exact center of the cyclone. In the middle of a cyclone, the air is generally still, but the great pressure of wind on every side of the house raised it up higher and higher to the very top of the cyclone, and there it remained and was carried miles and miles away as easily as you could carry a feather. It was very dark, and the wind howled horribly around her, but Dorothy found that she was riding quite easily. After the first few whirls around, and one other time when the house tipped badly, she felt as if she was being rocked gently like a baby in a cradle. Toto did not like it. He ran about the room, now here, now there, barking loudly, but Dorothy sat quiet on the floor and waited to see what would happen. Toto got too near the open trapdoor and fell in, and at first the little girl thought she had lost him. But soon, when she saw one of his ears sticking up through the hole, for the strong pressure of the air was keeping him up, so that he could not fall, she crept to the hole and caught Toto by the ear, dragged him into the room again, afterwards closed the trapdoor so there would be no more accidents could happen. Here's a picture of that event. Hours after, Hour after hour passed away, and slowly Dorothy got over her fright, but she still was quite lonely, and the wind shrieked so loudly all about her that she nearly became deaf. At first she had wondered if she would be dashed to pieces when the house fell again, but as the hours passed and nothing terrible happened, she stopped worrying and resolved to wait calmly to see what the future would bring. At last she crawled over the swaying floor to her bed, laid down upon it. Toto followed her and laid down beside her. In spite of the swaying of the house and the wailing of the wind, Dorothy soon closed her eyes and fell fast asleep. So that's the end of chapter 1. So for this meditation, if you want to do it along with me, take 3 deep breaths. For inhale, exhale. When I finish this myself, I'll start the meditation. You are there on the gray Kansas prairies, as far as the eye can see in all directions. The sky is gray, the ground is dried and gray from the beating sun. The tips of the blades of grass are burnt from the sun. You feel the wind howling in the distance, the storm clouds approaching. You can witness the grass begin to sway and ripple as you turn around and enter this small wooden house with a trapdoor in the middle, a rusty stove, a cabinet with dishes, and an old sink. 4 chairs around a old table. This house was once painted, baked by the sun to be as gray as the rest of the surroundings. The lumber was carried from far away to create this dwelling. As the wind becomes louder, think of the limiting beliefs you hold. Think of all the gray, sad, empty, lonesome feelings you have had. And as the wind raises in sound, raises in frequency, the house begins to rock, begins to sway back and forth. It spins once, spins twice, as it rises up in the air, out of the window, through the swaying of the wood. You can see this gray, dark surroundings become more fuzzy from the distance as this house is rising through this force of nature that is the twister. The tornado is spinning as you allow all that doesn't serve, all that is not for you to be left on the ground, to be left in the dust of this environment. You are being raised. You do not feel the fear. You allow this rocking to be settling like a baby in a crib. As you look out the spinning windows again, You cannot see that gray environment. You see the blue of the sky. You can feel the air not covered in dust. You are being raised in vibration to a new horizon, to a new place that you haven't been before. Take this time to thank any energies that you believe that are protecting, that are helping you in this journey. Do not fear that you will be dashed to pieces when the house lands. Know that it will be a gentle passage. You make your way to the large bed in the corner. Lay your head off to rest. As this meditation comes to an end, begin to get feeling back into your body, back into your hands. You can open your eyes again if you did close them. This is the first chapter in the first meditation. Thank you for joining me on this imagination journey, and you can spend more time here if you would like. I'm ending it now. Thank you for watching, and if you would like any questions, please send an email, and I will also have a link to the online public domain book. Hope you all have a great day. Much love.